Hello and welcome to the Inside the Orange podcast, the podcast all about understanding the people around us. Firstly, I'd like to apologise that the episode is coming to you later than expected and not the usual Thursday at 2 o'clock spot, but the next episode I can absolutely guarantee will be out on Thursday as usual. Now today's episode is about how the Inside the Orange came to life and what it's about. And this episode is called Unpeeling the Orange. It's the Inside the Orange origin story. Let's get into it. Now, firstly, I'd like to thank Tom Burt for coming on the show last week and talking about his podcasts and his life as a Brit in the US. The boys at the Songwriters Lounge this week opened up to their audience one of the questions I asked Tom, and it's great to hear that some of the great responses. Make sure you check out the Songwriters Lounge podcast if you haven't yet. And if you missed the episode, there'll be a link in the description. And why not check out the other episodes on my channel too, if you've missed any of them. Since the first episode came out, people have asked me, why is it called Inside the Orange? And today is the day I talk about it. I've been asked whether it is based on a high-vis colour I wore in a previous job. I've been asked why it's an orange. And the answer is so much more, but still based on the simplicity of an orange. When I first thought about it, I was walking my dog, and I thought about how people are trained in businesses that I've worked in. I found the training I had in certain businesses very one-dimensional, where you sit in a training room or a classroom setting and someone talks to you through the job you're about to start. And I've been asked before to go through workbooks that tell me what's expected, all the jargon you see, and then asked to start the task afterwards. And this has always felt backwards to me. I started to think about the many different ways people learn, through visual aids, working experience, even down to art and language. And thought, how do we get the people around us to understand what we expect of them if we only teach them one way? And that's the business way. One of the best examples I've witnessed of different ways of learning was from a guy that runs a first aid course called Focused First Aid. And I was explained when I went to the training that it was a guy who likes to show slides. Now, we've all sat through thousands and thousands of slides before and struggled to keep our eyes open. So I went in thinking, this isn't going to be anything I'm really interested in. This isn't going to engage me. And it was a 3-day training course. But what the guy did was, he didn't just show us slides. He started with a very, very basic statement. And he said to us in a first aid course, that I need to trust you that you are going to be able to perform CPR on my children and save their lives. And would I trust you to do it? Now, from a guy that was just going to show you slides, he then walked you through every single scenario you might come across. Yeah, through slides. But he gave such an in-depth explanation to every single slide that came on the screen, every single ailment that you may come across. And he put a story behind it. So it wasn't just simply this guy showing you slides. It was this guy living every accident, every ailment he had seen, and giving you a story of, firstly, why you don't want to be in that situation, and two, if you do find yourself in that situation, what you need to do. And he was very powerful and very honest about what to expect. And some of the slides were pretty gruesome, but they all had the link into, this is what I need you to do. And it all linked down to the similar 3 things that you need to keep remember to do it, to be doing. This was so amazing. But if I'd have gone into it with the understanding that this was just going to be another slideshow, I probably would have walked out and thought, no, I'm not going to do something like that. That doesn't sound right at all. And that was the first time that I saw how important it is to not just be a generic training idea or plan or, this is what you're doing. You had to add some emotion into it. And I saw this guy do this and it absolutely blew my socks off. So when I thought about Inside the Orange, I thought about people being asked to learn the job, as in, this is the job, this is how you do it. Now off you go and do it. And I thought about people being told, this is the job, I'm going to show you what I'd like you to do, how to do it. And finally, this is the job, this is how you should do it. And do you have any questions? Do you have anything you don't understand? So I decided to put the idea to the test. So I went out and bought a Lego set, just a simple £9 piece of Lego. And I unpacked it and I built it without the instructions. But I had the box in front of me. And that was to show that this is what was expected as the outcome. So when someone's shown you, this is the job, there you go. That's what it should look like. Now give it a go. Now in Lego sets, I must add, you do get extra pieces, even though, as I'm saying this, I sound like that guy who puts some DIY together and says, oh yeah, there's always some bits left over. I didn't remove anything that I wouldn't need, and I built it in 14 minutes. And when I reviewed it, I missed out one piece. But the model was okay to the eye. It looked like it did on the box. But let's break that down though. The model was completed, but not to the best standard, and the job took longer than it needed to do. I then demolished the model, mixed the pieces back up, and I did it again. This time I followed the instructions provided by Lego. It took me less than 5 minutes, and there was no missing pieces. Now this is hardly a scientific breakthrough, but it told me a story. When left to complete the model with no instruction, but with the finished article clear to me of what it should look like, the quality delivered was lacking, as in it took longer and it wasn't complete. Now, we allow our people this to happen with the just give it a go and see how you get on, see what happens technique. Straight away, you're inviting these quality holes to appear. Now, some places like buddy systems, and even when you have a buddy, you are still open to the interpretation of someone else's take on the job. Someone that, unless you know and trust their capabilities to the full, could end up damaging the quality of the product and effectively the brand. So, what's this got to do with an orange? I started to think more about in terms of understanding people and understanding businesses. I thought that we expect a person to research a job before they start, but it doesn't work the other way. We use CVs, we use interviews, we use the STAR technique interviews and competency-based interviews to find the ideal candidate by what they can do. Now, I'll be honest, I am awful at answering questions in interviews for jobs, as I like to paint a picture, not talk about it in 4 distinct bullet points. Now, I'm sure I'm not alone when there are people who won't change jobs because of the fear of the interview if they were to go for another job. I thought about recruitment and retention, and I thought of a couple of things. How can we make people understand the people they want working for them, and how do they keep these people? As I said in an earlier episode, a lot of this comes back to my son and how he will cope in the working world as an autistic adult. Now, if you haven't heard this, it's on episode 4 of the podcast, and there'll also be a link in the description. I started to think about how important it was to understand both what a business is about, when all you know really is what's on the outside, and what do businesses know about the people, again, by only what they are allowed to demonstrate in interviews and based on their jobs. Now, I've worked in places when someone has been working somewhere for 5 or 6 years, and you'll hear someone say, wow, I didn't know that about you. Why not? If this is important to a person, why are you only finding out now? I started talking to my family about it. And I said, I've got an idea of understanding people and business from the outside in. I remember talking to my mum about it. And she asked me to explain it to her. And I talked about it, about what you can see from the outside of a business and what businesses understand and how they can understand the inside of a person. And I remember I was in the kitchen at the time. And in the kitchen we had a fruit bowl with loads of fruits on it, obviously. And I looked at the fruit bowl and I picked up an orange. And I said, it's like asking, what's inside this orange? That was my eureka moment. An orange is such a basic thing, and we all know what an orange is. Like we know about businesses like Amazon, Apple, Tesco, and we know people. Yet it's only when we open an orange do we actually know what's inside. How many segments, how many pips, how much vitamin C, etc. Now, same thing with people and businesses. Only when we understand people do we understand their individuality. I also love the fact that nothing rhymes with orange as well. So it's unique in this way. And it's the uniqueness that makes me feel that we can understand people better by understanding what's inside their orange. Everyone's orange is different. But what we do when we meet people in jobs or in hobbies and exercises, things that we all think the same way in, and when someone doesn't think the same way as you, that's when you start seeing conflicts. That's where you start seeing isolation in people. And it really doesn't need to. Companies will ask to see the real you in their organisations, but that still needs to be a diluted version of yourself. If anything I'm saying is something you disagree with and your company completely understands you outside and in, then brilliant. You are in an amazing company that does it already. But I know though, through experience and from looking around and speaking to people, that there's still a lot of companies and organisations and groups that still have a comply rather than stand out way of operating. People will judge you based on what you wear, what we say, and how we look generally. It seems like human nature. But I challenge every listener to ask someone they don't know to tell them something about themselves, and you might be amazed in what comes out. I remember having passing conversations with a guy I work with up until recently, and it was only recently that I said to him that I had a podcast and I was interested in inspiring people, and I found out that day that we had very similar interests. Now this took almost 2 years of me working with him before I found out we had this shared interest, and ultimately we've become friends. And he's also helped me out loads with my websites and putting what I want done written into proper English. When I first started talking to people, mainly about this business idea, people said to me that they thought it would be tough to monetize it. And what is it that I do? And can I really expect a business to accept some guy walking off the street telling them that they've got their people wrong? At that time, I threw the idea in the bin and thought that the people were right. Then I found a TED Talk that changed my life. It was Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And I sat and watched this video, which was part of a university study I was doing at the time, and I was close to tears. I finally heard why Inside the Orange should be a thing. It's because I believed it, and I was inspired to make sure people were in work and were valued and loved, and were inspired to be the best versions of themselves, and that company engagement and retention flourished. How much would it make me? I didn't care, because I wanted to change the world. And to paraphrase Simon, this was my why. If you haven't heard of Simon Sinek or seen his TED Talk from 2010, then I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, there was something I saw on LinkedIn this week by a guy named Alf Dunbar. He's the creator of You Are the Difference Limited, and he shared a post that I read. And it said, I want to inspire people. I want someone to look at me and say, because of you, I didn't give up. This resonated so strongly with me, as these podcasts are meant to help inspire people to get talking, to ultimately understand what is inside everyone's orange. People that know me know that I love to talk. I'm sorry if that's a spoiler to anyone, but when someone gives me their stories, I love to listen. I love to be surprised, and sometimes all it takes is one conversation that will change someone's life. Questions I like to ask people is, what is stopping you from pursuing your goals? And what inspires you more than anything in the world? When I've managed teams or led teams, I rarely talk shop to people in any role I've been in, as people should know what is expected of them. If they don't, then as a leader, I haven't done my job right. I like to talk to people about what drives them and how did they get here. And I don't let people believe that they have made mistakes and should regret them. I tell them that the path has led them to this point and that it is one filled with mistakes and that could have, should have, and would have never helped. The next chapter of your story starts today. So I ask everyone, what are you waiting for? Ultimately, I'd still love to get inside the orange into businesses, organisations and groups. I'd love to talk to businesses about how this idea can grow, how it can inspire, develop and support people in the business world. I'd love to help businesses understand their people better if they're struggling to find those passions of people at work, and maybe who are even struggling to retain great people in their business. It's my goal in life to help link businesses, organisations and groups to their people and vice versa. And I aim to continue to do this by interviewing people who I believe have stories that are more than just their business plans and work life. I've had the pleasure of interviewing some great people so far. They've described their inspiration and helped people know them better, whether that's at home or at work, get to know them better. I have some amazing guests coming up in the next few weeks who have some amazing stories to tell. And I'm grateful that this podcast is the way to do it. If you work in a business or have a story to tell, then get in touch with me. The information for how you can get in touch will be available at the end of the episode. As I've said many times, this podcast is also aimed at raising awareness and supporting people with autism. I have received some great feedback about understanding autism from people that have heard the episode, so episode 4 again, link in the description. And I'll continue to spread the message of autism awareness through these podcasts. And if you have any questions about autism, then please get in touch. Please also remember there are some fantastic websites where you can visit and find additional support, such as the National Autistic Society at autism.org.uk and Ambitious About Autism at ambitiousabouautism.org.uk. Again, these links will be in the description. If there's anything you want to have talked about on the show, then please feel free to comment, email, get in touch. And if you believe it, I want to talk about it. Today, though, I'd like to thank you for listening to the episode. If this podcast is something you really enjoy, then please subscribe to the podcast and make sure you like and share so more people can hear our message. Next week, we have an interview with David Donnelly, whose story of change is so inspiring that I was delighted when he reached out to me and said he'd like to come on the show. Remember, if you have any questions for me or my guests, you can get in touch via our website, insidetheorange.co.uk, on Twitter at OrangeWhats, Orange WHATS, on Instagram on Inside the Orange, on Facebook on the Inside the Orange podcast page, or via email insidethisorange@gmail.com. All these links will be available in the description. Thanks for listening, goodbye and take care.